I woke up in silence, as usual. I sleepily reached for the other side of the bed, but all I could feel was the cold sheets. 4 years had passed, and I still hadn't gotten used to Alfred being gone. The clock on the bedside table read 6:30. My internal alarm system never failed, even when I retired and stopped rushing to work every morning. There was a deafening silence in our now my house in Maricopa. I slowly put on my robe, slipped my feet into my worn slippers, and wandered into the kitchen. The familiar route, the familiar movements, as if I were a robot programmed to repeat the same actions. Open the refrigerator, take out the egg, turn on the kettle, cut a slice of bread. This kitchen was once filled with voices. Alfred, with his invariable morning wheeze, demanding coffee. Naren, giggling over school gossip. Declan, frowning, chewing his toast and not wanting to wake up. Now, only the ticking of the wall clock my husband had bought in '93 broke the silence. I turned on the radio, not because I was interested in the news, but to create the illusion of life in the house. The temperature in Maricopa will rise to 36 degrees today. Clear skies are expected, and the Arizona sun was already beginning to blaze through the kitchen window. I drank my tea, ate an egg, and walked over to the calendar pinned to the refrigerator. It was empty today, just like yesterday and the day before. The calendar used to be full of entries: Alfred's doctor's appointments, grandchildren's birthdays, lunches with Naren, shopping trips with Declan for his house. The pages were pristine now, except for the circles around the pension dates. I sighed and looked out the window at the dusty street. The Petersons lived across the street, and their grandchildren came every weekend. They were floundering in the inflatable pool, screaming, laughing. The sounds came even through the closed windows and the running air conditioner, making my heart clench. My grandchildren, Tristan and Imogene, lived only 30 minutes away in Chandler, but I saw them once every few months, usually when Naren needed emergency help with the kids or money for another emergency purchase. I walked to the living room and turned on the TV. The morning shows didn't interest me, but they provided the necessary background. Other people, other voices, the illusion of company. Ever since I'd retired from the accounting department of the Pinnacle Electronics plant, where I'd worked for 32 years, my life had been an endless string of identical days. The phone rang at 10:25. I shuddered. Calls were rare, except for promotional offers and surveys. "Mom, are you home?" Noreen's voice sounded unusually animated. "Where else would I be, dear?" I tried not to show how excited I was by her call. "Oh, good. I have wonderful news." She spoke quickly, in her usual way when she was excited about something. "We're going to Sedona next week, the whole family, and we want you to come with us." I sank into the chair, my heart racing. Sedona? The whole family? Yeah, can you believe it? Boston got a bonus at work, and we decided to take a little vacation. 4 days in Sedona. Tristan and Imogene were so excited, and we thought, why not take Grandma? It would be good for the kids to spend time with you. Boston, Noreen's husband, worked as a computer programmer for some company. I rarely saw him. He was always busy at work or walking his expensive motorcycle with friends. It's, that's wonderful, honey. I felt tears coming to my eyes. When are you planning on going? Next Friday. Noreen sounded like she was doing me an incredible favor. Declan's going too with Fiona. Isn't that great? The whole family together. Declan and his wife Fiona were even more rare in my house than Naren and her family. My son worked as a construction site inspector and was constantly on the road. At least that's how he explained his absence from the family dinners I tried to organize every month, but which remained only a pipe dream. "Of course I'll go," I said without thinking. "It's a great idea. Good." Noreen sounded relieved. "You know Boston has a big SUV, so there's plenty of room for everyone. We can pick you up Friday morning." I'll be ready, I promised, feeling warm inside. What do I need to bring? Oh, Mom, nothing special. Just the usual stuff for the trip. We're staying in a cabin that Boston booked online. It's got like 2 bedrooms, living room, kitchen. There's plenty of room for everyone. We talked for a few more minutes. Naren listed the places they wanted to visit, but it mostly sounded like, we'll see where we are. She asked how I was feeling, listened to my short answer, and then quickly said goodbye, citing busyness. When I hung up the phone, the room didn't seem so empty anymore. I got up and walked over to the window. The Petersons' grandchildren were still splashing in the pool, but now the sight didn't make me long for them. Soon I would be spending time with my grandchildren, too, for 4 whole days. We'll explore the red rocks of Sedona together. I'll tell them stories about their grandfather who loved geology and always wanted to visit these places. Maybe we'll even cook together. I'll teach Imogene how to bake those oatmeal cookies that Naren loved so much as a child. I hurried into the bedroom and opened the closet. What to bring with me? Comfortable walking shoes, a must, a sun hat, light dresses for daytime outings, and something decent for the restaurant. We'll probably all go out to dinner together. My fingers fumbled with the box of photo albums on the top shelf. I pulled out one with a blue cover and a faded sticker that read, Summer 2001. Alfred and the kids at Lake Mead. Naren, a freckled girl with protruding front teeth. Declan, a lanky teenager with a mop of unruly hair. We were so happy then. I closed the album, carefully put it back in the box, and went back to packing. I still had to decide what gifts to bring my grandchildren. I had some money left over from my last pension transfer. Tristan had turned 9 last month and was fascinated by dinosaurs. Maybe a book on the geologic formations of Arizona? And Imogene is 6, and she loves anything shiny and pink. A bracelet with pink stones? Sedona gift shops must have a lot of interesting things. I pulled a suitcase out from under the bed, an old but good suitcase Alfred and I had bought for our 30th anniversary trip to Niagara Falls. Suddenly, I felt a pang of regret that he wasn't there to share in this joy. How happy he would have been for a family trip. Alfred had always dreamed of how we would travel with our grandchildren when we retired. I brushed away an unsolicited tear and continued pulling things out of the closet. You can't live in the past. I should be happy with what I have now. My children, my grandchildren, the opportunity to spend time with them. I mentally went over all the things we could do together in Sedona. Then the phone rang. This time it was Declan. Hey Mom, Noreen said you were coming to Sedona with us? Yes, honey, I'm so glad we're all going together. I couldn't keep the excitement out of my voice. Yeah, it'll be great, he said a little absent-mindedly, as if he were doing something else at the same time. Listen, I've been thinking. You don't mind if Fiona and I split up from the group once in a while, do you? She wants to go to some spas, and maybe I'll play a round of golf with Boston. Of course I don't mind, I answered quickly, though something inside me trembled. Everyone should have their own time. That's fine. One more thing. He hesitated. Could you bring your big thermos with you? The blue one that Dad always took fishing. Also, do you have any folding chairs? We're a little short for the picnic. Yeah, sure. I mentally noted that I'd have to get all that stuff out of the garage. Anything else? No, that's it for now. Why don't you take your camera? That old Polaroid. It'll be fun for the kids. We discussed a few more details of the trip before he said goodbye, referring to some meeting. I returned to the suitcase with even more enthusiasm. The camera. Of course I'll take a Polaroid. Tristan and Imogen will love getting instant pictures. We could make a whole scrapbook of our trip. The rest of the day was spent in pleasantries. I checked the thermos and chairs in the garage, found and tested the Polaroid, and continued to put things away. In the evening, I even called my old friend Esther, whom I hadn't spoken to in months, to share the news. Sedona. How wonderful, Rose. Esther sounded genuinely happy for me. You deserve this vacation, and how nice that the kids invited you. Yes, it's so unexpected and so nice, I agreed. You know, sometimes I think they forget I exist. They only call when they need something. But this invitation, it shows that they do think about me, doesn't it? Esther was quiet for a second longer than she should have been. Of course they do, Rose. I'm sure they'd love to spend time with you. After I talked to Esther, I couldn't sleep for a long time. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, and imagined our family climbing the red rocks, sitting around the fire in the evening, my grandchildren listening to my stories. For the first time in a long time, I felt needed, an important part of the family. It would be a wonderful trip, I was sure of it. I fell asleep with a smile on my face, dreaming of the days ahead filled with laughter, conversation, and love. Ahead of me was the real family adventure I had dreamed of for so long. Friday came faster than I expected. Waking up at 5 in the morning, I once again checked my suitcase, thermos, folding chairs, and other things the kids had asked me to take. Everything was ready and waiting at the front door. I even baked cookies for the road, oatmeal and raisin cookies, Naren's favorite treat from childhood. Boston promised to pick me up at 8, and at exactly 8:35, I heard the klaxon sound from the street. They didn't go inside, they just honked, like cab drivers. I picked up my suitcase and the bag of cookies, hung my bag on my shoulder, and reached for the thermos and chairs, but I realized I couldn't carry everything at once. Before I could decide what to take first and what to go back for, the front door swung open and Tristan and Imogen flew in. "Grandma!" Imogene shouted, hugging my legs. Her blonde hair was braided into two pigtails with pink bows. "Mommy said you baked cookies." Tristan noticed the bag in my hand. "May I?" "Sure, honey." I held it out to him. "But let's load the stuff into the car first. Will you help me?" The kids grabbed a cookie each and rushed back to the car, completely ignoring my request. I sighed and, picking up my suitcase and bag, walked out onto the porch. Boston's big black SUV was parked outside the house, the engine running, the air conditioning clearly on full blast. Declan got out of the car and headed toward me. "Hi, Mom." He kissed me on the cheek. "Let me help you with your stuff. You've got a lot of stuff." "Hello, dear," I smiled. "There's a thermos and chairs in the hallway, like you asked." He took the suitcase and my bag, and I went back for the rest. When I went outside again, Declan was standing by the open trunk, clearly puzzled. "Mom, I'm not sure it's all gonna fit." He scratched the back of his head. The trunk was already full. I looked inside. Indeed, the space was filled with suitcases, bags, boxes, an air mattress, and a bunch of other things I couldn't identify. "Maybe something could be moved into the cabin?" I suggested. Declan grimaced. "It was full there, too. 8 people are traveling, you know." "8?" I was surprised. "There are 7 of us. You, Fiona, Noreen, Boston, the kids, and me." "Oh, you don't know?" Declan looked a little embarrassed. "Boston invited his colleague Hugh. He's recently divorced, needs a break. Cool guy, works with artificial intelligence or something." I looked at my son in silence. "So some stranger is coming with us on a family vacation?" "Don't worry, he's cool." Declan patted my shoulder. "Okay, let's try to get your stuff organized." He shoved my suitcase into the narrow space between the drawers and the backpack, setting it on its side, even though I'd packed it so it wouldn't get wrinkled. He shoved the thermos between the suitcases, but there was no room for chairs. "We'll have to leave them," he decided. "We have folding chairs, that's enough. But you asked me to—" "Mom, seriously, there's no room." He sounded annoyed. "Grab your bag and get in the car. We're already late." I obediently picked up my bag and headed for the car door. From the open windows came children's laughter and some modern music. I opened the back door and saw that the car was indeed packed to capacity. Two child seats occupied the edges of the back seat, and in the middle sat Hugh, a tall man with a fashionable beard, wearing a t-shirt with some kind of scientific print. He gave me a friendly nod. Fiona and Noreen were in the middle row, with bags of food, and children's toys between them. Mom! Noreen turned around. Finally! Where have you been? We've been waiting forever. I wanted to say they were late, but I didn't. I'm sorry I was late getting ready. I smiled. Where do you want me to sit? Noreen and Fiona looked at me. Well, actually, there's only room left next to the kids. Noreen nodded at the narrow space between the children's seats. You don't mind, do you? You won't be cramped. You're skinny. I looked at the seat. Even a child would be cramped there, let alone an older woman with arthritis. But I had no choice. If I wanted to go with my family, I'd have to put up with the inconvenience. Sure, I don't mind. I struggled to squeeze into the back seat, squeezing myself between the baby seats and a man I didn't know. Hi, I'm Hugh. He held out his hand. You must be Naren and Declan's mom? It's a pleasure to meet you. Rose Hildreth? I shook his hand. Dash nice to meet you. Boston sat behind the wheel, tapping his fingers on the steering wheel. Declan sat next to him. Everybody ready to go? Boston didn't turn around. Let's go. The car started up. The drive from Maricopa to Sedona takes about 3 hours if you drive nonstop. I made myself as comfortable as I could in my cramped cubbyhole and got ready to enjoy the ride. Grandma, I'm thirsty. Tristan tugged at my sleeve about 10 minutes into the ride. I have water in my bag. I reached for the bottle. I don't want water. I want a Coke, he said crankily. We don't have Coke, honey. I tried to smile. Water is very good for dash mommy dash exclamation mark, Tristan yelled. Grandma won't give me Coke. Naren turned around, rolling her eyes. Mom, there are cans of Coke in the blue bag at your feet. Give it to him, please. I bent over, feeling my back ache, and pulled out a can of Coke. Tristan snatched it out of my hands without even thanking me. I want one too, Imogen said immediately. I bent down again for the second can. The next 2 hours were a nightmare. The children demanded food, drink, and toys, which kept falling to the floor, and I had to bend down and pick them up. Naren and Fiona were talking passionately about a TV show, completely ignoring what was going on in the back seat. Boston and Declan were talking about work, and Hugh was trying to read something on his phone. Grandma, I'm bored, Imogen began crankily. Tell me a story. No, I don't want to hear a story. Tristan was indignant. I want to play with cars. Then play with him, grandmother, Imogene demanded. I tried to please both of them by telling Imogene stories and at the same time making the motor sounds for Tristan's cars. After half an hour of this multitasking, I was getting a sore throat and dizzy. Nate, why don't we make a stop? I suggested when we passed a roadside restaurant. Stretch out, grab a bite to eat. We're already late, Boston said. We want to check in before it gets dark. I'd like a bite to eat, Hugh said. Can we at least go through the drive-in and get coffee? Boston reluctantly agreed. We stopped at the nearest fast food place, and Boston turned to the saloon. What can I get you? Orders poured in from all directions. When it was my turn, I modestly asked for a small coffee and a sandwich. This will be, and Boston turned to me. Rose, would you mind paying? I only have my card, and there seems to be a problem with it here. I nodded and fumbled for my wallet. It was a lot of money. We'd all ordered full lunches with desserts. But I paid without saying a word. After all, I was happy to treat my family. We continued on our way. Everyone's mood improved after the meal. Even the kids quieted down for a while, enthusiastically munching on fries and drinking milkshakes. I stared out the window at the Arizona scenery floating by. The desert landscapes were gradually being replaced by more hilly terrain. We were approaching Sedona. So, what about lodging? Declan asked Boston. You said there were 2 bedrooms? Yeah, Boston nodded. A 2 bedroom with a pull-out couch in the living room. It's not the Ritz, but it's a decent place. What's the assignment? Fiona asked. Declan and I get our own bedroom? Naturally, Boston grinned. Noreen and I too. The kids can sleep in the living room with Rose. I tensed. Sleeping in the living room with 2 active kids? After a day on the road, I needed a proper rest. But I kept quiet. I didn't want to cause trouble. Where would I sleep? Hugh asked. There was an awkward pause. Shit, I hadn't thought of that. Boston scratched the back of his head. Maybe on the living room floor? Or in the car? I can look for a hotel nearby, Hugh suggested. No problem. No, Noreen interjected. We'll think of something. Maybe. She turned and looked at me. Mom, you don't mind sleeping on the cot, do you? Hugh can have the couch, and you can have the cot, and the kids can have the mattress. I felt my insides clench. A cot? At my age, with my arthritis? Yeah, I started, but Noreen interrupted me. Great. That's settled then. Mom on the cot, Hugh on the couch, the kids on the mattress. I could do the cot, Hugh said hesitantly. I'm not comfortable taking the sofa. Don't be silly, Noreen said. Mommy has to get up early anyway, and she'll make breakfast while we're asleep. Right, Mom? I nodded, feeling a lump come up in my throat. This was what they expected of me: cooking, cleaning, babysitting. Not family time, but free housekeeping and babysitting. Finally, we entered Sedona. The city was surrounded by majestic red rocks, like ancient guards protecting the place. The sun was already setting, coloring the rocks an even richer red. Despite all the disappointments, I couldn't help but marvel at the beauty of these places. The cottage that Boston rented was in a small complex on the outskirts of town. It was a typical Arizona-style one-story house with mud walls, a flat roof, and a small patio. It looked pretty decent from the outside. Boston parked, and everyone started unloading from the car. I struggled to get out of the back seat, stretching my stiff legs and back. Mom, could you watch the kids while we unloaded the stuff? Naren didn't even ask. She stated, Of course, dear. I took Imogene's hand. Come on, let's go see the cabin. Inside, the house was smaller than I'd expected. There were 2 bedrooms, but they were tiny, with double beds taking up almost all the space. The living room connected to the kitchen into a single space, with a couch in the middle that needed to be folded out for the night. Where would the cot be? I asked, looking around the room. Oh, right, the cot. Naren turned to Boston. Honey, did you bring the cot? Boston wrinkled his nose. I thought you put it down. I asked you to. No, you said you'd take it yourself. They started arguing, and I realized the horror of the situation. There was no cot, which means it's okay. I tried to diffuse the situation. I can sleep on the floor, on blankets. No, Hugh intervened. I'll sleep on the floor. Mrs. Hildreth will take the sofa. But Noreen began. No buts, said Hugh, suddenly firm. I insist. Naren pressed her lips together, but didn't argue. I smiled gratefully at Hugh. At least one person in this company was being polite. It took about an hour to unload the car. My suitcase was the last to be unloaded, and it came out wrinkled and stained from a spilled drink. I took it into the living room and tried to find a place for my things, but all the closets and shelves were already occupied. Just leave it by the couch, Fiona said as she walked past me. You'll sleep here anyway. I did, though the thought of leaving my stuff unpacked for the rest of the vacation was depressing. By 9 p.m., everyone was finally settled in. The kids were running around the house, excited about the new place. The adults settled on the patio with beer and wine. I wasn't invited, of course. Someone had to put the kids to bed. Grandmother, tell me a story. Imogene climbed onto the couch where I was to sleep and settled on the pillow. I have to wash my face and brush my teeth first. I tried to be stern. I don't want to. Tristan plopped down next to his sister. I want to play. It's late, sweetheart. You're tired from the road. There'll be lots of fun things to do tomorrow. I'm not tired. Tristan jumped up on the couch. I want to watch cartoons. From the patio came the laughter of the adults. They were clearly having a good time while I struggled with the kids. I took a deep breath. I needed to stay calm. After all, I had come here to spend time with my family. It might not be what I had envisioned, but it was still better than sitting alone in an empty house in Maricopa. After an hour of persuasion, I did push the kids into the bathroom and force them to perform basic hygiene procedures. By the time they finally laid down on their mattress, it was almost 11 and the adults were still partying on the patio. I went out to them to let them know the kids were asleep. Ah, Mom. Naren raised her glass. Come join us. I sat down in the only available chair. Boston poured me some wine. So, what are the plans for tomorrow? I asked, trying to involve myself in the conversation. Fiona and I want to visit this new spa. Naren pointed to a brochure. They do incredible red clay massages. And Declan and Hugh and I are going golfing. Boston added. It's a great course here, overlooking the cliffs. I blinked in confusion. What about the kids? And what am I going to do? Naren and Boston looked at each other. Well, we thought you could spend time with the kids. Noreen smiled. Show them the city, take them to a museum or something. You like spending time with your grandchildren, don't you? I felt something inside me snap. That was it. I wasn't here as a family member. I was here as a free babysitter. They weren't even planning on spending time all together. Of course, I forced myself to smile. I'd love to take the kids for a walk. Great. Noreen clapped her hands together. And by the way, could you pay for the entrance fees to the museum? We'll spend all our money on the spa and golf, and you don't have anything else to spend your pension on, do you? I nodded silently, clutching my wine glass. Yes, it seemed I was just a convenient resource for my children, a source of free labor and money. But I kept telling myself that the most important thing was to be together with my family, even if the family didn't seem to appreciate my presence at all. The morning began with children's screams. I opened my eyes and didn't immediately realize where I was. The couch was uncomfortable, my back was aching, and my head felt like a small hammer was pounding. Imogen and Tristan were awake and bouncing on their mattress, yelling about cartoons and breakfast. Grandma, I want pancakes. Tristan ran up to me and started shaking my shoulder. Get up. I want pancakes. Me too, me too. Imogene picked up on it. Chocolate. I struggled to sit up, wincing at the pain in my lower back. The clock read 6 in the morning. The house was quiet. The rest of the adults were asleep, I guessed. Shh, kids. I put my finger to my lips. Let's not wake up Mommy and Daddy. But I want pancakes. Tristan stomped his foot. I sighed and got up from the couch. Really, who better than a grandmother to make her grandchildren breakfast at 6 in the morning while their parents were in bed? In the kitchen, I found a minimal set of products: milk, eggs, flour, butter, enough to make simple pancakes, though there was no chocolate for them. I rattled the utensils quietly, kneading the batter and heating the skillet. What's that noise? A disheveled Hugh came into the kitchen, rubbing his sleepy eyes. He was sleeping on the floor in his sleeping bag, and I felt a twinge of conscience that I'd made him sleep on the hard floor. Sorry to wake you. I smiled guiltily. The kids wanted pancakes. At 6 in the morning? Hugh shook his head, but didn't look annoyed. Dash, let me help. He came over and took the whisk from me. I'll stir and you fry, he suggested. It'll be faster. We worked together, talking quietly. The children sat at the table, tapping their forks impatiently on their plates. Soon the aroma of fresh pancakes wafted up, and I put the first batch on the plates. But they're not chocolate. Imogene was indignant. I wanted chocolate. Honey, we don't have any chocolate, I tried to explain. Why don't we put syrup on them? No, I want the chocolate ones. She crossed her arms across her chest and pouted her lips. I've got a chocolate bar in my bag. Hugh intervened. You could melt it and pour it over the pancakes. Imogen brightened, and I smiled gratefully at Hugh. He took out a chocolate bar, so we melted it in the microwave and poured it over the pancakes. The kids pounced on the food with satisfied cries. By 8 o'clock, the rest of us were awake. Naren entered the kitchen, elegantly dressed and with perfect makeup, as if she were preparing for a photo shoot rather than an outdoor vacation. Pancakes. She took one from the children's plate. Thank you, Mom. I helped too, Hugh said. Naren seemed to notice him only now. Yes, thank you. She nodded absent-mindedly. Mom, could you make some coffee? And please collect the children after breakfast. We have to be out by 9. Out? I looked at her in surprise. I thought you were going to the spa? That's tomorrow. Naren rolled her eyes. Today we're all going camping. Red Rock, Lookout Point, lunch outdoors. Family day. My heart quickened. Family day. This is exactly what I've been dreaming of. Finally, we would all spend time together, admiring the beauty of Sedona, talking, laughing. Sounds wonderful. I couldn't help but smile. I'd be happy to help pack. The next hour passed in the hustle and bustle of preparing for the camping trip. I helped pack up the kids, made sandwiches for the picnic, packed water and juices. Joy overwhelmed me. For the first time since the beginning of the trip, I felt like we were truly a family. By 9:30, everyone was almost ready. Declan and Boston were taking things out of the house to the car. Naren and Fiona were applying sunscreen, and the kids were running around the rooms, looking for toys they wanted to take with them. I was standing at the exit with a picnic basket when Naren approached me with 2 bulky suitcases. Mom, you're going to take those suitcases, aren't you? She didn't ask, she asserted. I looked at the luggage in surprise. Suitcases? We're going camping. Why do we need suitcases? Naren rolled her eyes. These aren't ordinary suitcases. These are expensive Boston cameras, a tripod, and photography equipment. We want to take professional photos for Instagram. But, they're so heavy. I gingerly touched the handle of one of the suitcases. I'm not sure I can carry them. Oh, Mom, don't be so dramatic. Naren grimaced. They have wheels. I don't think you can roll a suitcase on a mountain trail, I pointed out. Listen, Noreen lowered her voice. Boston spent a lot of money on this equipment. He wants to take good pictures. Can't you just help? I was about to object, but that's when Boston came up. So, Rose, are you taking the suitcases? He clapped me on the shoulder. Oh, great. I knew I could count on you. I'm just not sure that. Come on, Boston interrupted me. They're not that heavy. Besides, somebody's got to carry them. Why not you? The question came out before I could think about it. Boston raised his eyebrows in surprise. Because I'm carrying the backpack and watching the kids, obviously. But the kids are my responsibility too, aren't they? I felt something boiling inside me. And I'm already carrying the picnic basket. Jesus, Rose. Boston rolled his eyes. If you don't want to help, just say so. But then don't complain that we don't include you in our plans. He turned to Naren. Your mom doesn't want to carry the suitcases. What? Naren stared at me. Mom, really? We invited you on this trip. We're paying for your lodging and food, and you can't even help with your suitcases? Pay for my lodging? I couldn't believe my ears. But I paid for my own gas, my own food on the road, my own groceries. Oh, don't start. Noreen waved her hand. Always this money talk. We invited you. You came. Now, make yourself useful. Declan entered the room, followed by Fiona. What's the problem? Asked the son. Is everyone ready? Mom refuses to carry the suitcases with the equipment, Naren complained. Declan looked at me with disappointment. Mom, really? You said you wanted to help. I do, but these suitcases are too heavy for me, I tried to explain. I have arthritis and we all have pains. Fiona snorted. I have a migraine, for instance, but I'm not complaining. I looked from one face to the next in confusion. Didn't any of them realize that asking an old woman to carry heavy suitcases uphill was too much? Just leave her alone. Fiona turned to Declan. She obviously doesn't want to be part of the family. What? I felt tears coming to my eyes. How can you say that? I've always... Grandma, Tristan came running up to me. You promised you'd carry my backpack. And mine, Imogen added. And my doll. I didn't remember promising anything like that, but it didn't matter now. The situation was getting out of hand. Look, I took a deep breath. I'd love to help with the kids, the picnic, anything. But I can't physically carry these suitcases. Can't we just take the essentials? All the equipment is necessary, Boston cut him off. And either you carry the suitcases or stay home. She can't go home, Noreen snorted. Not unless she walks. Exactly, Declan said. You'll carry our bags or you'll walk home. There was silence in the room. I looked at my son, at my daughter, at their spouses, and for the first time in a long time, I saw them for real. Not as I wanted them to be, but as they really were. I understand, I said quietly. I finally understood. What are you babbling about? Noreen asked irritably. Are you taking the suitcases or not? I shook my head slowly. No, I said, I'm not. What? Declan looked like he couldn't believe what he was hearing. What do you mean, no? It means no, I straightened up. I'm not carrying your bags. And I won't stand for this attitude. What kind of attitude? Noreen shook her hands. We're just asking you to help. No, I shook my head. You're not asking. You're demanding. You're using me. The whole trip you've treated me like a free babysitter, cook, and porter. You've made me sleep on an uncomfortable couch. You've dumped the kids on me. You demand I pay for everything. And not once, have you asked me what I want. Oh, here we go. Fiona rolled her eyes. Classic manipulation. Manipulation? I grinned bitterly. My whole life is a story of how I let you manipulate me. But it won't happen again. I walked past them toward the exit. No one tried to stop me. Where are you going? Noreen shouted after me. Mom, don't make a scene. I didn't answer. My thoughts were jumbled, but one thing was certain. I didn't want to be with these people anymore. I didn't want to be part of this family, where I was valued only for the services I could provide. It was sunny and warm outside. I took a deep breath of mountain air and walked down the street with no clear plan, just needing space to think. All my life I had lived for others. First for my parents, then for Alfred, then for my children. I never allowed myself to be selfish, always put my family's needs before my own. And what did that lead to? My own children didn't see me as a person. To them, I was a tool, like a household appliance, useful when it worked and annoying when it broke. I thought of my late husband. Alfred wasn't always perfect either, but at least he respected me. He'd consulted with me, sought my opinion. And after he died, it was like I was invisible to my own children. Around the corner, I saw a small cafe with a terrace. I needed to sit down, gather my thoughts. I went inside, ordered a cup of coffee, and sat at a table by the window. From here, I had a view of the red rocks of Sedona, majestic, ancient, immutable. How I wish I could be like those cliffs, I thought, solid, unyielding, not letting the winds and rains change their shape. The longer I sat there, the clearer my thoughts became. I recalled countless instances of children taking advantage of my kindness. Declan borrowing money he never paid back. Naren dropping off my grandchildren on weekends to go away with Boston to yet another resort. Their disparaging remarks, the rolling of their eyes when I tried to offer advice, their absence on my birthday, their calling only when they needed something. I thought about how I dreamed of this trip, how I envisioned us exploring Sedona together, talking, laughing, strengthening family bonds, how I hoped to get to know my grandchildren better, to be not just a grandmother to them, but a true friend. How naive I was. Outside the window, I saw a familiar black SUV. It was parked in front of the cafe, and Declan, Naren, their spouses, and their children got out. They were arguing about something, gesticulating vigorously. Then Boston pointed toward the cafe, and they headed toward the entrance. I squirmed in my chair, not wanting them to see me. But something made me look more closely at the car. And then I remembered the car keys were in my bag. Boston had had too much to drink last night on the way back from the restaurant, and Declan had asked me to drive. I had to go, even though I didn't like driving in the dark, especially in an unfamiliar place. When we got there, I put my keys in my bag by machine, and no one asked for them back. I looked at my bag lying on a nearby chair and made a decision. After quickly paying for my coffee, I slipped out the side door, walked around the building, and headed for my car. My heart was pounding in my chest, and my hands were shaking, but I knew I had to do it. I got behind the wheel, put the key in the ignition, and started the engine. For a few seconds, I just sat there, realizing the significance of the moment. For the first time in my life, I was going to do something purely for myself, not caring what anyone else thought. As I pulled onto the road, I took one last look at the cafe. Through the window, I could see my family seated at the tables. They looked carefree, happy. They hadn't even noticed I'd taken the car. Well, they will soon, I thought as I stepped on the gas. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know what I was going to do next. All I knew was that I would never go back to being a free servant in my own children's lives. My life of submission and manipulation ended here, on the Sedona Road, under the vast blue Arizona sky. The road went off into the distance, winding between majestic red cliffs. I gripped the steering wheel tightly, still not believing what I had done. 10 minutes ago, I'd left the cafe, leaving my family behind, and now I was driving. Where to? I had no idea. My heart was pounding like crazy, and my palms were sweating. My thoughts were jumbled, jumping from disbelief at my own courage to panicked realization of what I'd done. What had I done? What would happen now? And why did I feel so heavy and so free at the same time? I drove past the sign that said, Sedona Center 3 miles, and decided to just get to the center of town first. There, I could park and think about what to do next. My hand reached for the radio, and the cabin filled with the sounds of a good old Janis Joplin song, Me and Bobby McGee. Freedom is when you have nothing to lose. How long has it been since I listened to music that I like, and not my children or grandchildren? How long has it been since I've done what I want to do, and not what my family wants to do? The phone in my bag vibrated. Surely they'd already discovered the missing car. I threw a brief glance at the screen. Naren. For a few seconds, I fought the temptation to answer, to apologize, to go back. But then I remembered their faces, their voices. You'll carry our suitcases, or you'll walk home. Cold determination returned, and I dismissed the challenge. Downtown Sedona was a picturesque tourist area with numerous stores, galleries, and restaurants in a uniform Southwestern style. I parked in the public parking lot and got out of the car. The morning sun was already beating down, promising a hot day. What now? I asked myself aloud. The phone vibrated again. This time it was Declan. I sighed and answered it. "Where's the car?" my son asked without greeting. He sounded fierce, his voice a poorly concealed rage. At my place, I marveled at my own calm. "What do you mean, you have it? Give it back right now. We're stuck in the middle of—" "No," I interrupted him. For the first time in my life, I interrupted my own son. "I'm not going back." "What?" He clearly didn't expect that answer. "Mom, are you out of your mind? We're at the cafe. We have to go to the—" "Call a cab," I interrupted again. "Or rent another car." "On what grounds did you take Boston's car?" "It's not Boston's car." I felt anger rising inside. "It's the car I drive. And I don't have to go back to a place where I'm treated like a servant." "What the hell is wrong with you?" There were angry voices on the phone. Apparently, Declan put it on speakerphone. "We invited you. You invited me to cook, clean, babysit, and carry your stuff." I took a deep breath. "But guess what? I quit. Find yourself another maid." I pressed off and immediately turned my phone off. I was shaking, either from fear or excitement. I'd never talked to my children like that in my life. I'd always thought a mother was supposed to be soft, understanding, forgiving. But now, I felt like I'd done the right thing. I looked around. Tourist life was bustling all around. People were taking pictures against the backdrop of red rocks, going into stores, sitting in street cafes. I was alone among this crowd, and for the first time in a long time, this loneliness didn't seem burdensome. As the sun rose higher, I realized I needed a hat. At the nearest gift store, I bought a wide-brimmed straw hat and a bottle of water. The clerk, an older woman about my age, looked at me with interest. "First time in Sedona?" she asked, punching in my purchase. "Yes," I smiled. "And I think I've already fallen in love with this town." "Oh, that's okay." She nodded understandingly. "Sedona has a special energy. Some people come for a weekend and stay for the rest of their lives." I left the store, put on my new hat, and walked along the street looking at the windows. Strangely, despite the endless calls, my phone was now lying switched off at the bottom of my bag. I felt at ease. For the first time in many years, I could go wherever I wanted, stop wherever I wanted, look at whatever I wanted, and no one tugged at me, demanded my attention, or rolled their eyes at my slowness. One of the galleries had paintings of local landscapes on display. I stepped inside, attracted by the bright colors. The walls were hung with paintings that showed the red cliffs of Sedona glowing in the sunset light, and in another series of works, the same cliffs looked mysteriously purple in the pre-dawn haze. "Do you like it?" I heard a voice behind me and turned around. A woman stood in front of me, tall, slender, with a mop of gray hair gathered in a careless bundle. She looked to be about 60, but she held herself with such energy that she seemed much younger. She wore a simple paint-stained jumpsuit, and her brightly rimmed glasses hung around her neck. "Very much," I replied sincerely. "Especially this one, with the sunrise. It's like the rocks are about to come alive." "Thank you." The woman smiled. "I'm Verity Palmer, and these are my works." "Oh, I'm embarrassed." "I'm sorry, I didn't realize. I'm Rose Hildreth." "Nice to meet you, Rose." Verity extended her hand, and I shook it. "Are you here on vacation?" "You could say that." I nodded uncertainly. "There's been a slight change of plans, though." Something in my tone must have betrayed my condition, because Verity looked at me carefully. "You know what?" She smiled. I was just about to close the gallery for lunch. Would you like to keep me company? There's a great cafe nearby with a view of the cliffs. I hesitated for a second. After all, I was free to do what I wanted to do and talk to whoever I wanted to talk to. I'd love to, I replied. The cafe was a small, cozy place with a terrace overhanging the slope. The view of the valley and the red rocks was spectacular. We ordered salads and iced tea. So, Verity sipped from her glass. What brought you to Sedona? I wanted to say something general and meaningless, but instead I found myself telling her the whole story about how excited I'd been about inviting the kids, how I'd dreamed of a family vacation, how I'd gradually realized that they only needed me as free labor, and how I'd finally given up and driven off in my car, leaving them at the cafe. God, I covered my mouth with my hand as I finished the story. I'm sorry. I don't know what came over me. I just met you and I just dumped all this drama. Don't apologize. Verity smiled. Sometimes it's easier to open up to a stranger than to someone close to you. And you know what? I admire you. Me? I raised my eyebrows in surprise. For abandoning your own children and grandchildren, for finally deciding to live your own life. She looked at me seriously. Believe me, I know what I'm talking about. I've been through a similar thing. Verity told me that she was once an accountant for a large company in Phoenix. She has 3 children and 4 grandchildren. She, too, was a handy mom, always willing to help, always available, always putting her family's needs before her own, until one day she ended up in the hospital with a heart attack. You know what struck me the most? Verity shook her head. Not that I could die. It was that, as I lay there, hooked up to the machines, I suddenly realized that I couldn't remember the last time I'd done anything for myself, something that would bring me joy, not just the satisfaction of accomplishment. After she was discharged, she decided to change her life. She quit her job, sold her house in Phoenix, and moved to Sedona to pursue painting, a hobby she had abandoned 30 years earlier for her family. My kids were furious, she grinned. They were used to their mom always being there for them, always helping, always backing them up. And then, all of a sudden, bang, mom was gone. They had to learn to live on their own. E, you don't keep in touch with them? I asked cautiously. Why not? I do, Verity smiled. But on my terms. I love them and they love me. But they know I'm not their maid or their ATM or their full-time babysitter. I am their mom, period. And you know what? We have a much healthier relationship now than we used to. I looked wistfully at the red rocks. Could I have envisioned this scenario for myself? An independent life where I do what I want, not what others expect me to do? The phone in my bag was off, but I could almost physically feel it vibrating with the anger of my children. What are they doing now? Trying to call a cab? Calling the police? Or just sitting in a cafe, cursing the ungrateful mother who dared to disrupt their plans? You feel guilty? It wasn't a question, it was a statement. Verity looked at me with understanding. Yes, I admitted. They're my children, and my grandchildren. It's not their fault how their parents behave. Let me give you some advice. Verity leaned toward me. Turn on your cell phone. Call them. Tell them you're okay, but you've decided to take this vacation away from them. Tell them you love them, but you need time to yourself. And then turn off the sound and enjoy your freedom. I imagined this conversation and inwardly shuddered. But Verity was right. You can't just disappear. At the very least, I needed to let them know I was okay. After lunch, Verity offered to show me the other Sedona, not the touristy one, but the real one. We got into her tattered pickup truck and drove down the winding roads away from the center of town. Tourists don't come here much, she explained as we climbed up a dirt road, but the views from here are the most stunning. We stopped at a small platform that seemed to hang over a precipice. Below was a valley surrounded by red rocks, and in the distance we could see the silhouette of a bell-shaped mountain. They call this place the Secret Lookout. Verity pulled two folding chairs out of the trunk. The locals know about it, but you can't find it in the guidebooks. We sat on the edge of the cliff, drinking bottled water and watching the sun move slowly toward the horizon, changing the hues of the red rock from bright scarlet to deep burgundy. Do you ever feel real? I asked, not taking my eyes off the rocks. What do you mean? I don't know how to explain it. I shook my head. Sometimes I think the real Rose is somewhere deep inside, buried beneath the layers of mom, grandmother, widow, all these roles I play. And I don't remember what she is anymore, the real me. Verity nodded thoughtfully. I think a lot of women of our generation can understand that. We were taught that a woman's fulfillment is her family, that our purpose is to care for others. And somewhere along the way, we lost ourselves. I remembered how I used to love to sing. I had a good voice. I even performed in the school choir. Then there was school, work, marriage, children. When was the last time I sang? Not counting lullabies for my children and grandchildren, just for myself, for pleasure? But it's never too late to find yourself again, Verity continued. That's what I did when I moved here. And believe me, it was the best decision of my life. I took my phone out of my bag and turned it on. Notifications of missed calls and messages popped up. 27 calls from Naren, 18 from Declan, a few from Boston and Fiona. Dozens of messages, getting more and more panicked and angry. Mom, where are you? Get the car back now. This is crossing all lines. We're stuck in a coffee shop in the middle of nowhere. If you don't come back, we'll call the police. Tristan's crying. He's scared. Are you happy? The last message came just 15 minutes ago. Mom, please just tell us you're okay. We're worried. I took a deep breath and dialed Naren's number. She answered after the first beep. Mom, where are you? Are you okay? Her voice was a mixture of relief and anger. I'm fine, I answered calmly. I just decided to take this vacation away from you. What? But, the car. We got stuck at the cafe. We had to call a cab home, and it cost a fortune. I'm sorry you had to spend a fortune. I marveled at my composure. But I'm not coming back. What do you mean you're not coming back? What about our things? They're still in the house, and yours too. I don't need my things. I felt a strange lightness in saying that. And yours. I think you can arrange with the landlord to pick them up later. Mom, are you crazy? Noreen's voice became hysterical. What's gotten into you? Where are you going to go? Where are you going to live? Don't worry about me. I smiled, staring at the sunset over the red rocks. I'm a grown woman and I can take care of myself. I just wanted to tell you that I'm fine and you don't need to worry. But I'll call you later. I interrupted her. I have to go now. Love you all. I pressed off without waiting for an answer and turned off the sound on my phone. My hands were shaking, but I felt surprisingly calm. Good job, Verity nodded approvingly. The first step is always the hardest. We sat on the observation deck until the sun disappeared over the horizon, coloring the sky a fantastic shade of orange and purple. I thought about my life, about how, step by step, I had allowed myself to be turned into a servant for my own children, how I'd given up my desires for their convenience, how I feared their displeasure, their disappointment. What will I do next? I asked myself rather than Verity. What do you want to do? She turned to me. What does the real Rose want? I wondered. What do I want? For so many years, I'd lived on the desires of others. I'd almost forgotten my own. I began uncertainly. I want to see the sunrise over these rocks. I want to try painting. I want to sit in a cafe and read a book without fear of someone interrupting me. I want to be free. To be free. Then that's exactly what you should be doing. Verity smiled. You know what? I have an empty room above the gallery. I sometimes rent it out to visiting artists. If you want, you can stay there for a few days until you decide what to do next. I looked at this woman I had only known for a few hours, but who had already given me more understanding and support than my own children had over the years. Why are you being so kind to me? I asked. Because I was in your shoes once, she replied simply. And another woman helped me. Now I'm helping you. The circle closes. We got back to town when it was getting dark. Verity showed me to a room above the gallery, small but cozy, with a bed, a table, and a kitchenette. The window overlooked Sedona's main street and the mountains in the distance. Make yourself comfortable. She handed me the key. If you need anything, I live in the house behind the gallery. Tomorrow I can show you some more places where they don't take tourists. When Verity left, I sat down on the bed and for the first time in a long time, let myself just breathe, just be, without having to cook, clean, listen to complaints, be helpful. I walked over to the window and looked out at Sedona at night. The city was twinkling with lights, and a starry sky loomed over it, as bright as you wouldn't see in bigger cities. Somewhere out there, in one of the houses, was my family, angry, confused, probably still expecting me to crawl back in to apologize. But I wasn't going to do that. For the first time in years, I felt real, alive, free. 4 days in Sedona flew by in the blink of an eye. Verity showed me places that aren't in the tourist brochures. Secluded trails, hidden canyons, ancient petroglyphs on red rock walls. We met the sunrise at the secret lookout and watched the sunset from the terrace of a small cafe that served the best apple pie in town. Every day I learned something new about the city, about myself, about a life that could be lived differently. Verity introduced me to her friends, women like me who had started a new life after 50. Among them were Irene, a former teacher from Minnesota who now led tours of Sedona's energy vortexes. Clarissa, a writer from New York who had escaped the hustle and bustle of the city to write detectives in the silence of the desert. And Nina, a former bank teller turned Navajo pottery maker. Each of these women has traveled a different path to freedom and fulfillment. Each found the courage to change lives when all paths seemed predetermined. Their stories inspired me and gave me hope that all was not lost for me. But as time went on, I realized I couldn't live in the room above Verity Gallery forever. I had to go back to Maricopa, deal with the consequences of my escape. Are you sure you're ready? Verity asked when I informed her of my decision. We were sitting in her backyard, sipping our morning coffee. You can stay another week if you want. Thanks, but I need to get back. I shook my head. You can't run away from your problems forever. This isn't running away, she objected. It's time to yourself, a big difference. And yet, I smiled. I need to deal with the kids. I need to dot the I's and cross the T's. And then I can start something new. On the last night in Sedona, Verity threw a small party. Irene, Clarissa, and Nina brought food and wine, and we sat on the terrace, talking and laughing until late into the night. They gave me a small ceramic figurine, a woman with her arms outstretched, as if embracing the world. It's the goddess Chang, Nina explained. In the Hopi tradition, she symbolizes transformation, rebirth. It is given to those who are beginning a new phase of life. In the morning, Verity drove me to the bus station. We hugged goodbye, exchanged phone numbers and email addresses. Come back anytime, she said. My door's always open to you. The bus to Maricopa took about 4 hours. I stared out the window at the desert landscape floating by and thought about what awaited me at home. The kids are probably furious. The grandchildren are likely upset and confused. What will I tell them? How will I explain what I did? I've barely turned my phone on all these days, only to send short messages to the kids that I'm okay and that I'll be back when I'm ready. The replies were angry rants that I preferred not to read. The cab driver dropped me off at my home in Maricopa around 3 in the afternoon. I stood in front of the familiar door and couldn't bring myself to put the key in the lock. Strangely, this house, where I had lived for more than 30 years, suddenly seemed foreign to me. It was as if it were not my life, but someone else's, into which I had accidentally glimpsed. Finally, pulling myself together, I entered. Inside, everything was just as I'd left it, clean, neat, familiar down to the smallest detail. And yet something was different, not in the house, in me. I walked through the rooms, opening windows, letting in fresh air. Then I sorted through the mail that had accumulated during my absence, watered the withered flowers, and sat on the couch, unsure of what to do next. The doorbell rang around 6 in the evening. I knew who it was before I even opened the door. Naren stood on the threshold, arms crossed over her chest. Declan loomed behind her, tense and frowning. "So you're back after all." Naren didn't say hello, just brushed past me into the house. Declan followed her in. I closed the door and turned back to them. "Yeah, I'm back. How did you get home?" "How did we get home?" Naren splayed her hands. "Are you serious? You left us in the middle of nowhere, stole a car, and now you're asking how we got here?" "I didn't steal the car," I countered calmly. "I just drove it away. And, if you remember, you gave me the keys yourself." "It was Boston's car," Declan intervened. "Which I returned to the rental car lot in Sedona," I nodded. "So there shouldn't be a problem with that." They both stared at me, clearly not expecting such calmness on my part. "Do you realize what you've done?" Naren turned almost to shouting. "You ruined our vacation. The kids were hysterical. Boston lost the deposit on the house. We had to take a cab back, and it cost a fortune. I'm sorry for what happened. I was truly sorry for inconveniencing my grandchildren. But I had no choice." "No choice?" Declan snorted. "Mom, you could have just said you were uncomfortable, that you were tired." "I did," I shook my head. "Many times. But you didn't listen. You never listen? And that's why you decided to throw this hysteria?" Noreen splashed her hands. "At your age, it wasn't a tantrum." I sat back in my chair, feeling like I needed to save my energy for a long conversation. "It was a conscious decision. I realized that you don't see me as a person. To you, I'm a free nanny, a cook, an ATM machine, a porter. So I decided I'd had enough." They looked at each other, clearly not expecting such directness. "Mom," Declan sat down on the edge of the couch. "You're exaggerating. We were just asking for help." "No," I shook my head. "You didn't ask. You demanded. You ordered. You threatened." "Threatened?" Noreen was outraged. "When had we ever threatened you?" "You carry our suitcases or you'll walk home," I quoted. "That wasn't a threat. It was a joke." Declan threw up his hands. "God, Mom, don't you have a sense of humor?" "No, it wasn't a joke." I looked him straight in the eye. "And we all know it." There was a heavy silence in the room. Noreen fixed her hair nervously. "Look, Mom." She changed her tone to a more conciliatory one. "Maybe we did go a little overreacting. But that's no reason to run off like a teenager and ruin the whole family's vacation." "I didn't run away," I countered. "I made the decision to spend the vacation apart from you, and that's my right. But you didn't even give me any warning," Noreen exclaimed. "Did you warn me when you decided I was going to sleep on the couch? Or that I'd sit with the children while you had fun? Or that I should carry your suitcases?" Silence again. Declan coughed. "Okay," he shrugged. "What's done is done. We didn't come here to fight. We're here to, settle this misunderstanding." It's not a misunderstanding. I shook my head. This is a serious conversation about how you feel about me, and about how I won't let you treat me like this again. What do you mean? Noreen asked warily. I mean that things are going to be different from now on. I straightened up in my chair. I won't be babysitting at your beck and call anymore. I won't give you money just because you asked for it. I won't make my life work for you. Mom, Declan stammered. Are you giving up your grandchildren? No, I looked at him firmly. I refuse to be your free servant. I'll be happy to spend time with my grandchildren when it suits me. Not just you. I will help you, if you ask, not demand, and I expect respect and gratitude for what I do. Naren laughed nervously. And what if we don't agree with your new rules? I shrugged. Then we'll have to cut down on communication. I can't force you to respect me, but I can decide who I spend my time with and how I spend my time. That's that's blackmail, Noreen exclaimed. You're blackmailing us into a relationship with you. No, dear, I shook my head. It's not blackmail. It's healthy boundaries, and I'm sorry you see them as a threat. Declan stood up, his face red with anger. You know what, Mom? If you want to be alone so badly, be my guest. Enjoy being alone. But don't expect us to come running after you when you change your mind. I'm not gonna change my mind, I said quietly. And I don't want to be alone. I want to have a normal, healthy relationship with my children and grandchildren, but that requires mutual respect. You're going to regret this. Naren grabbed her bag. When you realize you're all alone, don't call us. They left, slamming the door loudly. I sat in the chair, feeling a strange mixture of devastation and relief. For the first time in my life, I didn't give in. Didn't run after them with apologies, didn't try to smooth things over at the cost of my own dignity. I didn't sleep well that night. I tossed and turned, listening to the silence of the house, which suddenly seemed even emptier than before. I thought about my grandchildren. How would they take the absence of their grandmother from their lives? Did their parents explain to them what had happened, or did they just say that grandma's being bad? The thought that Tristan and Imogen might think I had abandoned them was unbearable. In the morning, I wrote them cards, simple, childish cards with pictures of Sedona on the front. I wrote that I loved them and missed them, that there had been a little misunderstanding between the adults, but that it didn't affect my feelings for them in any way. Promised to see them soon, mailed them, realizing that Naren might not get them to the kids. The Cold War began. The kids didn't call, didn't visit. I didn't call them either. I decided to give them time to cool off, to think. Week after week, and gradually the acuteness of the loss dulled. I began to get used to a new rhythm of life. Lonely but peaceful. I remembered Verity's advice to find something to do, something that brought joy to me, not to others. When I was young, I'd loved to mold clay, and I'd even taken a ceramics class in college. But then I had to quit. Studies, work, family. In Maricopa, there was a small art center that offered various courses for adults. I signed up for a ceramics class that was held twice a week in the evenings. The first day of the course, I was as nervous as a schoolgirl, afraid that I wouldn't do well, that I would look ridiculous among the younger and more experienced participants. But my fears were in vain. The group consisted of people of different ages, from students to pensioners. The instructor, Ramona Brooks, was an energetic woman in her 50s with short red hair and tattoos on her arms. Everyone has a different path in art, she said at the first class. Some come here to become professionals. Some come here to relax after a day's work. Some come to find themselves. All of these reasons are equally important and worthy. I sat at the potter's wheel, feeling the wet clay slide between my fingers, and gradually let go of my worries and doubts. That evening, I made my first ceramic cup in years. Crooked, uneven, but my own. You have talent, Rose, Ramona said as she looked at my work. You've done ceramics before. A long time ago, I admitted. More than 40 years ago. My hands remember, she smiled, and the soul too. At the course, I met new people. I especially bonded with Helen, a widow about my age, who had recently moved to Maricopa from San Diego to be closer to her son. We often stayed after class to have coffee and talk. My Howard died 5 years ago, she said. I thought life was over. I sat at home, watching TV, waiting for calls from my son, which were becoming less and less frequent. And then I realized that if I didn't change my life, no one would do it for me. Her story was similar to mine, and we quickly found a common language. Helen introduced me to her friends from the hiking club, and I brought her to a book club I'd heard about at the library. Gradually, my life was filled with new people, new interests, new joys. 3 weeks later, after a fight with the kids, I decided to take over the house. For too long, I had kept things as they were under Alfred. For too long, I had left the children's rooms untouched, as if expecting Naren and Declan to come home. For too long, I'd spent too much time adjusting to the grandchildren's visits, which came only a few times a year. I started small by rearranging the living room furniture. Before, everything was organized around the TV, the sofa across the room, armchairs on the sides. Now I made the center of the room a large window overlooking the garden, turned the sofa, created a cozy reading corner. Then I tackled the bedroom. I threw out the old battered mattress Alfred and I had bought before Declan was born and ordered a new orthopedic mattress with independent springs. I replaced the heavy curtains that had hung there for what seemed like an eternity with light navy-colored drapes. The most difficult thing was to take on the children's rooms. They'd stood untouched for years. Naren's room with posters of 90s pop stars on the walls. Declan's room with model airplanes under the ceiling. I kept them intact, like museum pieces, even though the kids were long grown and had families of their own. With a heavy heart, but a firm resolve, I began to sort through their belongings. A lot went into boxes for charity. Some went into the trash, and I put especially valuable heirlooms into small boxes that I could give to the kids later if they wanted. Declan's room I decided to turn into a guest room, with a comfortable bed, desk, and shelves for books, and Naren's room would be a ceramic studio. Ramona advised me on what equipment I could buy for home study, and I ordered a small potter's wheel, a kiln, and a set of tools. Every day I made something new for the house and for myself. I signed up for a computer course at the local library. I set up a social networking account on Helen's advice and started corresponding with Verity and her Sedona friends. I bought a pool membership and started going to water gymnastics classes for people my age. Gradually, the house transformed, becoming a reflection of my new life. I realized that for too long I had lived in a museum of the past, a mausoleum of unfulfilled hopes and faded relationships. Now every room breathed the present moment, my hobbies, my preferences, my life. A month after our fight, a letter arrived from Naren, short, formal, on her company letterhead. Mom, we are still in shock over your behavior in Sedona and our last conversation. You hurt the whole family, especially the children who don't understand why Grandma suddenly abandoned them. If you want to repair your relationship with us, you need to apologize and promise that it won't happen again. Boston thinks you should make up for the cab fare and the lost deposit on the house, but I said that's not necessary. I look forward to your call apologizing. Naren, I read the letter several times, feeling the familiar guilt rising inside and wanting to give in, to smooth things over, to go back to the status quo. But then I remembered Verity's face when she talked about healthy boundaries. I remembered Naren and Declan yelling at me in Sedona, remembered all the years I'd submitted to their demands to my own detriment. I didn't answer the letter, nor did I call to apologize. Instead, I made a new ceramic vase, tall, slender, with delicate red patterns reminiscent of the rocks of Sedona. Ramona said it was my best work. I put the vase in the most prominent place in my living room as a reminder of the change in my life and my determination not to go back to the same old relationship. The Cold War with my children continued, but now it didn't seem so agonizing. My life was filled with new meanings, new joys, new people. I was getting to know myself anew, not as a mother, not as a grandmother, not as a widow, but as Rose Hildreth, a woman with her own desires, interests, and right to happiness. 6 months is not such a long time in the scale of life. Just 6 months, 180 odd days. But sometimes it's enough to change a life beyond recognition. I stood in front of the mirror in the hallway, barely recognizing the woman who looked back at me from there. Instead of the usual gray-haired old woman with a dull look and slouching shoulders, I saw a trim, elegant lady with a short haircut, dyed a soft silver peach shade. Her new navy-colored dress accentuated the tan from her weekly hikes with the hiking club. You look amazing. Helen sat on the living room couch, waiting for me to finish getting ready. No one would believe you're 67. 68 in 2 months, I corrected, putting on the final touches of makeup. I used to wear makeup only for special occasions, but Margie, our water gym instructor, taught me how to do simple, elegant makeup for every day. And I don't care if they believe it or not. The important thing is that I feel 30. Helen laughed. 30 is a bit much, but 50 is easy. I went into the living room, which had also changed over the months. There were comfortable, modern armchairs instead of a bulky sofa, light curtains instead of dusty drapes, and my ceramic work everywhere. Vases, figurines, decorative plates. On the walls are paintings I brought from Sedona and photos with new friends. Nervous? Helen asked, standing up. A little, I admitted. It's my first exhibit after all. A small exhibit at the local art center isn't exactly an exhibition. Helen winked. It's still important to me. I picked up my purse and keys. You ready? We walked outside. It was a sunny day, typical of Arizona autumn. Warm but not hot, with a light breeze that carried the scent of flowers and herbs. I'll drive myself, Helen said. I'll meet you there. We went to our cars. Over the months, I'd traded in my old sedan for a compact crossover, more comfortable for my new hobbies. I had hiking boots in the back seat, a bike rack on the trunk. The new Rose was much more active than the old one. I was just opening the car door when the phone in my purse rang. I glanced at the screen and saw Naren's name. My heart shook. After a Cold War that had lasted several months, the children had begun to make attempts at reconciliation. First, it was infrequent, formal calls, then short visits, always tense and awkward. I took a deep breath and answered, "Hello, Naren." "Hi, Mom." Her voice sounded strainedly cheerful. "How are you?" "Fine, thank you. Are you all right?" Yeah, I'm fine." She paused. "Listen, Mom, I have a favor to ask you. Boston and I got an invitation to an important party tonight, a corporate event, very important to his career, and our regular babysitter is out of town. Would you mind babysitting? Just for a few hours." I looked at my watch. It was a little over an hour before the opening of the exhibit. Ramona had asked all the exhibitors to arrive early to go over the final details and prepare themselves mentally. "I'm sorry, Noreen, but I can't today," I said. "I have an important event." "An event?" There was surprise in her voice. "What kind of event?" "A ceramics exhibit at the Maricopa Arts Center. I'm exhibiting my work." There was a pause. I could almost physically feel Naren trying to make sense of this information. "Ceramics?" She finally squeezed out. "You do ceramics?" "Yes, for several months now. I didn't mention that I'd written to her about it in one of my letters, which she obviously hadn't read. And today is the first exhibition of our group's work." But, Noreen hesitated. It's not as important as Boston's corporate party. You can go to your exhibit some other time. No, I can't. I marveled at my own calmness. The exhibit is only today, and I promised to be there. Mom, Noreen's voice had a familiar note of irritation in it. You realize we're talking about Boston's career. It affects the well-being of our entire family, including your grandchildren. I realize it's important to you, I agreed. But why don't you hire another nanny for the day? What other nanny? Where am I going to find a nanny an hour before I go out? There are special agencies, I suggested. Or maybe one of the neighbors, or the moms of Tristan's classmates. I can't trust my children to strangers. Noreen was indignant. Then maybe Declan and Fiona could help, I suggested. They're going to the party too. I could hear the desperation in her voice. Mom, please, just for a few hours. Before, I would have given up. I would have canceled my plans, dropped everything, and rushed to my daughter's rescue. But not today. Not the new Rose. I'm sorry, Noreen, but I can't, I said firmly. My exhibit starts in an hour, and I have to be there. I can't believe it. Her voice shook with indignation. You're putting some pots before the welfare of your own grandchildren. I'm not putting one above the other, I countered. I'm just saying that I already have plans and I can't cancel them, just like you can't cancel your party. They're completely different things, Noreen exclaimed. My party is important to Boston's career, and your exhibit is just a hobby. It's important to me. I felt irritation rising inside, but I held it back. And I'm asking you to respect my plans as I respect yours. You've changed. Noreen's voice was accusatory. Ever since you made that escape in Sedona, you've become selfish. I'm not selfish, I said calmly. I've just learned to respect myself and my needs, and I expect my children to do the same. You know what? Noreen was almost shouting. Forget I asked. I'll find someone else. Someone who actually cares about his family. I care about my family, I said. But I also care about me, and you should be happy for me, not accusing me of being selfish. Fuck you for caring. Noreen blurted out and passed out. I stood by the car, still holding the phone in my hand. My heart was pounding, and my throat was lumpy. Before, a conversation like this would have knocked me out for days. I would have cried, blamed myself, maybe even called back and agreed to watch my grandchildren despite my plans. But now I just took a deep breath, put my phone in my purse, got in my car, and drove to the exhibit. The Maricopa Arts Center was housed in a converted old-school building, a brick structure with high ceilings and large windows. Inside, preparations for the exhibit were already in full swing. Ramona was arranging the students' artwork on special stands and tables. Rose, she waved at me. Finally, come here. We need to decide how best to arrange your collection. My collection consisted of 6 items, 2 vases, a 3-piece tea set, and a small sculpture of a woman with her arms outstretched. Each piece was made with love and effort, each reflecting a part of my soul. I think it would be better to put them by the window, Ramona suggested. It's well lit, and your glazes will play in the light. I agreed, and together we arranged my work. Then I helped the other students with their exhibits. Gradually, the room filled with people. Ramona's other students, their families, local art lovers. Helen came, and with her a few other friends from our walking club and book club. I presented my work to them, talked about technique and inspiration, and accepted compliments and criticism. You look so happy, Helen remarked when we were alone for a moment. You just glow from the inside out. I feel happy, I admitted. For the first time in, I don't know how many years. Is something wrong? She saw a shadow flicker across my face. You seem a little tense. I told her about my conversation with Noreen. Oh, those kids. Helen shook her head. They can't accept that we have our own lives, our own desires. We have to be moms to them forever available on demand, unresponsive, selfless. I still have a hard time saying no, I admitted. I feel guilty every time. It'll pass. Helen squeezed my hand reassuringly. In time, both you and they'll get used to the new relationship. Unless, of course, they're smart enough to accept change rather than fight it. The exhibition went on as usual. Visitors came and went. There was talk, laughter, music. A few of my works received special attention. They even wanted to buy a teapot from the service, but I refused to sell it. These things were too personal for me, too meaningful. To my surprise, toward evening, Declan showed up at the exhibition. He looked a little confused, as if he didn't know what he was doing in this place, among these people. Hi, Mom. He hugged me awkwardly. Naren said you had some kind of exhibit here. Yes, I nodded, not sure what my sister had told him. I didn't expect to see you here. I thought I'd stop by before the party. He shrugged. To see what you were doing. I walked him over to my work. Declan scrutinized them, asking a few questions about technique and process. You know, they're really beautiful, he admitted with some surprise. I didn't realize you could do that. There's a lot you don't know about me, I said without reproach, just stating the fact. Declan was silent for a moment, staring at the sculpture of a woman with her arms outstretched. Is that you? He asked finally. In a way, I smiled. It's a woman who embraces the world, but remains herself, doesn't dissolve into it, doesn't lose herself. Mom, Declan turned to me. Noreen called you today? Yes, and you refused to babysit? I already had plans, I said calmly. This exhibit. He looked around at the room, the people, the exhibits. And it's really that important to you? Yes, I nodded. As important to you as your job is to you, or to Noreen, her social life. Declan sighed. You know, it's hard for us to get used to. The new you. I understand. I smiled softly. It was hard for me to get used to her too. But now I don't know how I could have lived any other way. You look happy, he said with some surprise, and younger than before. I feel younger, I confirmed. When you do what you love, when you surround yourself with people who appreciate you, life takes on new colors. We talked for a few more minutes, not about the past, not about conflicts, but about the present, about my new hobbies, about his work. Then Declan looked at his watch. I have to get to the party, he said. Boston will be mad if I'm late. Sure, I nodded. Thanks for stopping by. He hugged me awkwardly goodbye. Mom, he said as he walked away. You know that I love you, don't you? I know, I smiled. And I love you. I always have, and I always will. It's just that now I love me too. After Declan left, I went back to my friends. The evening went on, with talking, laughing, making plans for the future. Ramona talked about the next course, a more advanced one, where we would learn advanced glazing techniques. Helen suggested a weekend trip to Tucson to visit the galleries and museums there. I listened to them, nodded, smiled, and a warm sense of belonging spilled over inside me. Not as a mother or grandmother, not as a helpmate and support for others, but as myself, a woman named Rose Hildreth who, at 67, had finally learned to live her own life. The phone in my purse vibrated with new messages, probably from Naren, still resentful of my rejection. But I wasn't in a hurry to check them. This was my moment now, my evening, my life, and I was going to savor every second of it. The show ended around 10 o'clock in the evening. Helen and I and a few other friends decided to continue the evening at a small cafe nearby. Sitting at a table with a cup of herbal tea, I looked around at the faces around me. smiling, attentive, interested, new friends, new connections, new opportunities. Returning home past midnight, I didn't feel an ounce of guilt for not being a good grandmother today, for not sacrificing my plans for the children. Instead, I felt a deep satisfaction that I had been true to myself, to my desires, to my boundaries. Of course, the relationship with my children still had to be rebuilt. It would be a long, challenging journey, with setbacks and conflicts. Perhaps we would never become really close. Too many resentments accumulated. Too different our ideas about family and mutual obligations. But one thing I knew for sure was that I would never go back to the old Rose, the woman who lived for others and forgot about herself. A woman who was afraid to say no, afraid to disappoint, afraid to be alone. That woman no longer existed. In her place stood the new Rose, confident, calm, self-aware. I undressed, washed my face, and went to bed. Moonlight streamed in through the window, coloring everything silver. I stared at the play of light and shadow on the ceiling and thought about how strange life was. Sometimes you have to lose everything to find yourself. Sometimes you have to be alone to stop being alone. As I fell asleep, I smiled. Tomorrow would be a new day, another day of my new life. And who knows what doors it would open, what opportunities it would bring. I was ready to find out, ready to accept whatever fate had in store for the new Rose Hildreth.